Hey y'all, welcome back. Well, as y'all seen in the last couple videos, I was using my new toy, my new sprayer. Well, I had mentioned during that video that there was a couple altercations, and you know me, I can't leave nothing alone. So a good friend of mine, Terry, made a comment and said he couldn't wait to see the Pimp My Sprayer episodes. This is gonna be Pimp My Sprayer. There's gonna be some big changes. Now for y'all that haven't seen the video, here is the sprayer. It's a FIMCO, let me spin the camera around. It's a FIMCO 30-gallon pull behind boom sprayer. So the problem is this right here is way too skinny because it's such a high center of gravity when you've got fluid in it. And pulling it down the road, it does this right here. So it's a great tank, great sprayer, great pump. I love everything about it, but I don't like the chassis it's on. You can see here, it's just got a lawnmower style chassis hookup. Now the idea that I had was that I wanted a small trailer, preferably 4 foot wide, that I could shorten or, skinny it up a little bit and shorten the trailer. Well, Harbor Freight has some that are 4x4 trailers. Northern has some of the 4x4 trailers, but they're somewhere around the $400 range. And the cool thing about them is the reason I wanted one of those trailers, because one, this has no springs. I wanted springs. I wanted hubs. This is running on a wheelbarrow style rim that's just got a bearing on the inside. They got really, really hot. Nothing against them. That'd be great for a garden or a yard, but for where I have to go to get it back in there, I wanted the bolted on wheels with true hubs, springs, and I want a coupler. I want a hitch. I don't want to just drop a pin through it. So the 4x4 trailers was exactly what I was looking for. But all of them that was online, either they wouldn't answer me, and most of them wanted $350, $300 for an old used trailer the bottom was out of. So I kind of give up on that idea. I talked to Kim a little bit about it. Well, then I come along, I found this from a subscriber, a local guy, that I traded some trail cameras for to get this one. Now this I thought was going to be the perfect candidate until I got it home and got to looking at it. It's overkill on the springs, huge springs. The trailer's not that heavy, but it's got a 5x5 bolt pattern. It does have hubs and springs, what I was looking for, and it's 4 foot wide on the trailer part itself, but it was really just too much overkill and cutting the frame up. And really, it's too good of a trailer. It looks a little rough, but it's too good of a trailer to chop up and make into a sprayer trailer. So Kim got on Marketplace and was looking yesterday while I went to pick up insulation for the trapping shed. And looky what she found cheap. A Harbor Freight 4x4 trailer. Now, the guy wanted $125 for it. That's a steal to me for what I wanted to use it for. It does have springs, 4x4 hubs, springs, 1 7/8 or 2-inch coupler. I ain't checked that out yet. C-channel frame. This is the perfect candidate. And I'm not in it that much. So, me having the background I've got in choppers and cars and building stuff, I thought I need a bit wider stance too when I go to chop this up. So I went and got some 9.5-inch off-road turf tires. So this thing is going to be Pimp Your Sprayer. Hopefully just one episode. I might have to break it into 2. But I'm going to pull this thing in the air conditioning in the garage. We're going to set you up on a tripod and get a good look at this thing and figure out what we got to take apart and what we got to do to get the measurements we need to mount that sprayer on the new Piney Pimp sprayer. So y'all stay tuned. Now that we're here in the shop, outside wheel is only 24 inches wide. This trailer, from outside of the hub on that side to outside the hub on this side, is 52 inches. So that I might end up shortening this axle in the center right here and then re-welding it back together. I've got my link in there, so I'll be good. Now this trailer is a bolted together trailer. As you can see, It's got bolts. It does have some flexibility to it. So basically what I'm going to do is figure out the width I need, cut these 3 bars to the width I need, take loose, because I've got to gain some clearance for my wider wheels here. The back space in those wheels won't go nowhere. It'll rub the trailer at this point. So now that I've got the tires off, I've got to get a back spacing measurement before I start anything. So I'm just going to lay basic square on the back, measure the depth against the back of the plate, and then that'll give me my measurement of how much axle I need sticking out past the frame for good clearance. Okay, so this is the wheel that come off of it. It is, which these are kind of dry rotted. These are pretty dry rotted. It's a 4.8 by 4 inch by 8 inch. So 8 inch rim. It's supposed to be 4.8 inches wide. So our back spacing is basically from the bolt pattern to, and I'm going on the flat of the tire because this one rounds over a little bit. So basically it's 2 1/4. So the stock is 2 1/4, and I had probably an inch clearance. This one to the back plate, get it center of the tire best I can. Whew, 4 3/4. Golly, these are gonna be wide. Yep, 4 3/4. So that basically means that I'm gonna have to have 5 inches or no, probably 4 3/4 be safe. We'll say 6 inches from the end of axle in. So if I'll do the math on that and tell you why this has to be my starting point. I need to know the width I need to be and then how skinny I gotta be. I know I need to be somewhere around 24 inches on the sprayer far as width-wise on frame, but I want to get as wide of a pattern. I don't want to be outside the side-by-side wheelbase for going through the woods and stuff and hitting trees. So I'm going to see what the measurement is from frame to the bolt plate, and then I'm going to do some math on it, and we'll figure out how far we need to take them sides in and whether we're going to cut the axle or not. Three 1/4 back spacing, so I was right. With that one being 2 1/4, there's only 1 inch. So that rim being 5 3/4 to the back, I need to at least give an inch. So we're going to have to be 6 3/4 from here in. So in doing that, this will have to be loosened on both sides and this rail moved in. So we know that we've got to have 6 3/4 inches from here to here. So now we'll do the math. I'll get that fender off, and then we'll go to the next step of measuring what we got to unbolt. Hopefully we can make our cut lines and re-drill our holes. And I'm probably going to bolt this back together, and I'm going to weld it too, and then we'll probably repaint the whole trailer. So let's get to the next step. Okay, now what I'm going to do, now that I've got the fenders and the wheels off and we know what the back spacing needs to be, I'm going to disassemble the FIMCO sprayer and just set it up on this trailer now that I have this trailer stable on jack stands. We're going to try to figure out what's going to be the coolest width that'll clear everything. So I've got to get the wheels and the hitch off of the FIMCO and set it on top just for placement. Now this is just setting on here. As you can see from the relation of where the tire will be, and you got to think this mid sprayer has to clear the back bar. We don't want nothing obstructing. So with where the spring locators are on the frame, I'm not going to clear because I have a frame rail right here. So, and you can see in the relation to this, the tire, where the tires rode, we basically want the sprayer about right here. And then move this bar in probably to this post. Have our springs hanging off the back. But I'm going to do a little bit more figuring because it really sets good right here. And that might work, but there's a lot that's going to have to be moved. Okay, after doing some measurements, what I have come to the conclusion is this is a bolt together trailer. I mean, somebody's already put this together. If you were to want to buy a new one to do this thing just bolts together. Now we will be doing some welding, but I'm going to show you how this channel is pre-made. So the bolt hole, the only bolt holding the front together is this bolt right here. There's one on each side, nothing on the front, nothing on the bottom. This bolt is just to hold whatever you want to put on top. We will not be using that. And if you look, the holes are spaced a foot apart. I'm pretty sure it's a foot. I could measure it, but it looks like 12 inches. And this is bolted on this lip of each rail. Now, after doing some measuring, there's only a 1/2 inch from here to here, so it's 1/2 inch center. So I'll have to cut this trailer a 1/2 inch here, or leave it a 1/2, mark it through, cut this bar off at a 1/2 inch all the way through, all three of them, on both sides. Now, this is pretty much centered, so as you can see, this bolt hole is going to be right. That bolt hole is going to be right. So, next step, and then I'll have to loosen these up to be able to slide everything over. So I'm going to go ahead and get the board off, the lights, get the bolts out of it, get my marks, and we'll pick back up in a second. We'll have everything but the axle width figured out. So I'll get to doing some measuring, disassembling. All the board's off, the lights are off, all the bolts are out of the main frame. The only thing holding this thing square is the C-clamps, basically around the axle. So I'm going to go ahead and cut everything. I'm going to loosen the 8 bolts on the U-bolts. The C-bolts, U-bolts, whatever. We're going to loosen them to where that can be slid in and out, and then I'm going to make my cuts and slide everything in where it's supposed to be. So it's basically taking 10 1/4 if you measure all the way against the inside of the frame. You're going 10 1/4 inches and making a mark. That puts you a 1/2 inch outside the holes we're trying to get to bolt this thing together. So if you're starting out and you're opening one of these out of the package, I would cut 10 1/8 inch off the ends right off the bat before you, the 3 middle crossbars before you put it together. And so I'm gonna go ahead and get the cutting and get the Okay, axle's out. As you can see, this is the spring perch kinda. This is where the bolt that holds the springs together, pockets in here. This is just a solid round stock welded into a C-channel for your hub spindle. So this has a lot of rope and stuff in the back of it. So while we got it out, we're gonna clean that up real good, or I'm gonna clean it up real good. Now, I've got all 3 pieces cut and kind of in place. It's back on jack stands. Now I'm going to set the sprayer up on top of it. Yep, so this back bar, man, I like the width of that big time. That's going to work out pretty good. Now this is going to be nice. But as you can see, this sprayer is going to hit about right here. These are good. So I'm going to have to drill a hole. It looks like I'm going to have to move this probably into about, it's going to have to go in further than that. I'm probably going to have to go right to the top of this spring perch and bolt this up on this spring perch. Okay, now what I've decided to do, I'm going to bring you back here to the back. I've got that back brace cut. So I don't want to block the back of my spring keepers to where I can get a bolt on them. And I don't really mind if there's not going to be a lot of weight. I really don't mind if the back spring perch is right behind it, but I'll show you what I'm going to do. So that bar originally was here. Well, this spray head, if you look directly down, it's going to be between that bar and where the back bar normally would go. So I'm going to go to the next set of holes, which will put that right there. I can still access if I ever have a problem here with this, and I'm going to take a piece of metal that's left over, and we'll box the end of this frame. But I've got to cut this frame off. So the bar will basically go there. I'll be able to weld here, 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 bolt, weld, bolt, weld. So, and then cut this off square with this, and then this will all be open for a really good spray. And the spring perch will set back just a little bit boxed in, but it's got plenty of reinforcement here. Shouldn't be an issue as long as I box into this frame. And if you walk around, I've got this one back in. I'll be spot welding here. I'll be spot welding here. I'll be welding and welding. I'm gonna loosen this bolt up, take this back over and weld this gap up and that gap. I'm gonna weld here. So I'll be attaching the sprayer here and here. That looks good. To get what we needed, this axle from boat plate to boat plate is roughly 47 inches. I'm needing 34 to clear my big tires. So what I've done is I made a mark at center, measured, basically I just measured from the two flattest spots to get my center, did my overall length, did the overall length I needed, and then divided it and then figured out what I need. So I'm gonna have to basically, even though I cut 20.5 inches out of this frame, out of all three of the mid braces, I'm only gonna cut 13 inches out of the center of this because the wheels are gonna be longer. So I've got my center mark 6.5 inches over, 6.5 inches over. So I will cut this, pull it back together, weld it back up, and then I'll have to measure my distance I need on my axles for my bolt hole through to bolt my U-clamps to. So I'm going to get to cutting this and we'll see where this ends up. So basically what I've done is I took the piece I cut out for alignment on the top. I have clamped both sides so that I can go ahead and weld each side of this to take this piece off and then weld the top. Then it'll be through welded all the way around. So we'll go ahead and get that welded right quick. So I welded it on the outside, inside, all three sides. So now it's a matter of doing the math on where to move this hole to here to set our axle back in place. So by the measurements, now from the edge of axle to edge of side is 4 3/4. So I've got it lined up dead center, marked, and I've got to go right in line with the spring, center of this. Okay, now I flipped this upside down to get it, to make it easier to hold the axle in place. So what I had to do was come in my 6.5 inches from this end and bore a 1/2 inch hole for the bolt to set through that holds your leaf springs together. And then now I'm going to throw the U-bolts on and we'll see about how the tires fit, how far. I'll impact everything in and we'll get the wheels on it. Ooh. Oh yeah. Now that looks good. That thing's gonna look mean. This is pretty cool. I mean, that's we went from a 2 foot wide footprint outside to outside to roughly a 42. So it'll fit behind the side by side, go through the trails, no issues whatsoever. Got plenty of clearance in the back for the tank. I put my axle underneath the leaf springs instead of on top. The reason I done that's more ground clearance. I still believe at the angle of this, once it's hooked to the Pioneer, I believe it, because it gravity feeds to the back of that tank at the bottom. So I wanted to have a little bit of grade up, which I can change that with a hitch. But this has turned out better than I had expected. You know, taking over 20.5 inches out of the frame braces, taking 10.5 inches off the back, and taking 13 inches out of the axle, and come up with this really cool beefed up cart. So, which should outlast probably the sprayer. But really, really tickled with it. Should pull go down the interstate. So, cut some brackets, do some welding, won't bother with you on that, and then I'll probably pressure wash it. But at this point, I'll need to fix a way to where I can get that sprayer on and off this buggy if anything happened or I busted a tank. So I'm gonna have to do a little bit of figure on that. But the old Pimp My Sprayer's come along pretty good. In looking at this situation, I actually found a piece of tread plate that was left over from that enclosed trailer build I did. It's been sitting over in the corner, so I'll probably use it on the front just because it looks pretty cool. But this bracket that bolts on the bottom of this tank was actually on this way with the open side facing the front of this rail. It has 2 holes just like this. So what I done, I took it off and I'm going to turn it around, and I can show you better here. I'm going to mark where these 2 holes go, because what's going on is once it's set up here on this flat piece, I'm afraid it's got a bolt in the front, so I know there's no rubbing there, but the way this is, it's flush. I do not want this tank to get a hole rubbed in it while transporting. And plus, I'd like to have a way to be able to take this tank off if I ever needed to. So I have the front end slide switch, or hitch that slides in and out. I've got it pinned on the front. I'm going to leave this bracket as normal, but I'm going to flip this bracket, and this center bolt does go all the way through. So I've got some seal oil I'm going to put on it, but I'm going to mark this bracket to where it can be bolted here with the same 9/16 bolts and sockets. Well, they're actually 3/8 or 9/16 head bolts that I have left over to put this on. So I'll get this flipped and then I'll get the camera up closer where you can see. But basically, that's it. So what I ended up doing, I found this piece of tread plate. As you can see, I welded all this in, flapper wheeled it down real good, brazier wheeled it down nice and neat. I did that all the way through. Added piece of the axle here to welded all that up and smoothed it. Welded all that up and smoothed it. Welded under here, flapper welded a lot of it. So basically what I've done to attach it, which it's not tightened all the way down yet, but you can see there, I have these 2 bolts, and I have this bracket raised up high enough that the tank clears underneath so it won't rub. So those 2 tightened down, and then I used the original shaft that come with it, drilled all the way through this plate, and run me a bolt, and I got my 2 keepers. So now the base of this is 20 inches wide. I ain't measured the length yet, but axle to axle outside is 42 inches. So this thing will fit in the woods. Should be no problem. Should be no problem with tipping over anymore. It shouldn't be no problem pulling it down the road to get to the lease anymore. And it looks freaking cool. So the next step, I've got a few screws in it, sheet metal screwed down to the tread plate and everything. So now I've got it where I'm going to be able to stop for today. It's been a long day. I've been at it welding, grinding, actually cutting my thumb with the cutoff wheel. But this is going to be my stopping point for today. And I'll be able to easily disassemble the top end and then go ahead and sand and paint the bottom. And then I'll show you what it looks like after that.